the top 20 things you need to have in a pest control contract, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez. Hey guys, happy Monday to you all. So glad that you're here. Super excited to be here, man. Wow, what an awesome week that we've had. We've closed some serious business this week. Got some contracts that we've been working on for years and pulled it off, a bunch of them. And we just so thankful to be here today. Got to do a little bit of training last week, teaching for the CPCO here in South Florida, and that was exciting. They actually asked me back, which was amazing. So that in itself is amazing. But I'm so glad to be here with you guys, sharing everything that is going on in the pest control industry, the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything that pertains to you, that affects you, the pest control technician that is out there doing the work, the business owner that is figuring it out, how to make this business profitable, hire people, train and manage, and grow your business. So thank you for tuning in every week. We're so grateful for that. Giving some shout outs this week, a bunch of them actually. I got Patricia Jason Kirkley. She's over at Classic Pest Control Operators, Inc. Thank you for liking the podcast, liking us on Facebook. We're so grateful that you're tuning in. We also got Natureside at Natureside on Twitter following us. Residex at Residex LLC is following us. Green and Gone Pest Control at green_and_gone on Twitter is also following us. Hitman Pest Control at Hitman Pest CTRL. And Sterling Pest Control at Sterling PCS. Wildlife X Team on Twitter. All these people are following us this week on Twitter. We're so thankful. Twitter blows up for us every week with people. We get more people following us on Twitter, and we're putting out a ton of material on Twitter constantly. So thank you for following us. We want to thank those that also gave us an iTunes review. Thank you for that. And remember, just go, if you're listening to us on Stitcher, wherever you find yourself listening to us, hey, will you be so kind and leave us a review there? Leave us the amount of stars that you think it's worth. And we really, really, really do appreciate that. If you want to join the conversation, you can call us 707-395-7378, 24/7 line, and you can leave your questions or comments, and we could use them on the air too if you like. If you like to have your question or comment on the air, if you like us to do a podcast around a certain question or comment that you're struggling with, we would be more than happy to look at that and do that for you. So grateful. And also, if you want to join the Pest Geek Society, membership is now open on our website, pestgeekpodcast.com. So if you go to pestgeekpodcast.com and you just register, there's a new member section, and we're putting out a lot of material that is for members only. So it's all free. You can get the material for free, and you can get join the Pest Geek Society for free also. So we just encourage you to do that. We thank you so much. On the tech tip, there is a new big dog in town competing against B&G. And boy, they've got some impressive equipment that they've put out. Anything from a 16-ounce crack and crevice sprayer that you can refill for crack and crevice, just like the AccuSpray. Actually, this one's a lot nicer. This one's got a pressure valve, and it tells you how much PSI is in there. It's got a pressure meter. Very, very nice piece of equipment. They got a quart size, and then they go up from gallon to 2 gallon. With all stainless steel and brass components. I mean, this is some really stiff competition for B&G. They've dominated the market in this high-end sprayer market, and they got some stiff competition from AeroFog. It's aerofog.usa.com. There's a link to it. check out their sprayers. They've got 20-inch wands with crack and crevice adapters, so there's no more need to you to squat down. It's just an impressive piece of equipment, guys. And like I said, there is some stiff competition, and B&G has dominated that market for 50 years, and these guys are just coming in with some really nice, modern looking, brilliantly designed equipment that is just really nice to have. So check them out. Check out the tech tip there of the week. And also, in the pest news, the emerald ash borer has begun attack on native trees. I told you, keep an eye on this, because this is going to come in and really, really, really cause some serious problems for a lot of trees, because rarely do these pests just attack one type of species. And now they're attacking the white finger tree. And this tree grows wild all the way from Jersey down to Florida, all the way to Oklahoma and Texas. And check it out. There's from our friends over at entomologytoday.org. There's 2 links there to that to find out emerald ash borer is coming to a town near you pretty soon. I know that they're moving south. They're already, I think, in parts of Georgia. I know they're definitely in parts of Texas, in Tennessee. So check that out. It's moved all the way from Michigan, moving south. So keep an eye on emerald ash borer for your trees, because you're going to have to educate some of your customers on these trees and how to get control of that. On the book end, we've got a Made to Stick: Why Some Ideas Die and Others Survive by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. Phenomenal book on marketing. If you're looking for marketing to understand the stickiness factor of products and why some marketing ideas really stick, and how to help your ideas of what you're marketing stick with people, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. I've listened to it already once, and it's old. It's not new. It was back in, I think, in 2006 it was published, but still very, very, very relevant. Very good book on marketing. I would check that out. And getting on to our main topic, we're going to be talking about your contract, your terms, your conditions, exclusions, limitations. If you're doing pest control in this day and age, you definitely, even if you don't have a contract, if you're a one-time company, if you're just providing services when the customer calls, you still need to let the customer know up front what your terms, conditions, exclusions, and limitations are, depending on the market that you're in. And we're going to be discussing one by one a lot of the issues that are involved in putting together a contract. And by no means is this podcast indicated to be legal advice. You need to really contact, for your state, an attorney to draw up your contract. But at least you know what it is that you're needing in that contract, and that way they can write up the legal language for it. Because it is important, especially in this day and age where we do a lot of places where people are looking for a payday. And you need to protect yourself, protect your company, protect your assets, protect the future of your family, and inform also customers what you can and cannot do for them. A lot of people are under the impression you're going to be able to cover everything, and that's not the case. We don't do termites. We're not a termite company, so you're going to need to get information on doing a termite contract. If you're doing bed bugs, you're going to need a bed bug contract. If you're not doing bed bugs, you're going to tell people you're not doing bed bugs, and that's excluded from your service. So there are things that you really, really, really need to look at in your contract to make sure. And we're going to go through this entire list. But limitations of liability. I mean, how much liability do you take on? And so you need to let the customer know that you have limitations on the liability. In other words, if you do a home that has a pre-existing condition, are you liable if you can't get rid of it? The customer says, well, you treated my house for pests and I still have fleas and my kids are getting bit, and, I'm going to sue you because you didn't get rid of them. So you need to have limits of how, you will, how much are you responsible for? I mean, if all of a sudden the customer has termite damage and you did their termites, and while that's getting fixed, are you going to be responsible for the home devaluating? Is there any punitive damages you're going to be liable for on that property? You really need to look at this. You're getting into, a lot of people get into business and they don't understand the amount of liability that they're taking on by doing this. When will you schedule the service? I mean, what will you cover on that service when you're doing an exterior service? Will you always do an exterior service? Will you always do an interior service? And are you letting in your terms your customer know that you're going to do it, or will you only do the interior when it's deemed necessary? These are things that need to be on your service contract. Your terms. Is this going to be on a 30-day notice? And does your customer need to give you 30 days notice? Is it going to be for 12 months? Is this going to be a 6-month contract? What are your terms? And if after a year, does the contract auto-renew? You need to let the customer know that contract is auto-renewing after a certain period of time. In 30 days, they need a right to cancel. So that's one of the things that you need to do. That's number 3. How are you going to handle late payments? Will you be charging the customer a late fee if they're late on their payments? Will you be charging them a percentage fee? And the question then is your state allow for that? Because certain states won't allow for one thing or another. You need to find out what your state allows for, what your municipality allows for in charging what's fair and reasonable, what's fair and customary. I mean, look at it this way. If you've got to borrow money at the end of the month to cover your bills, or you got to put it on credit cards because people aren't paying you on time, you're entitled to charge them a finance fee to finance the money. You're not penalizing them. You're just simply saying, listen, it costs me money to borrow money. And if you borrow money on your card, your insurance company or your credit card company is going to charge you a finance charge. If everybody who you're late, they're all going to charge, your electric company is going to charge you a late fee and a finance fee. They're financing your bill. And that's what you need to let customer knows, that you're not in the business of financing bills. You're in the pest control business. You're not a bank to be financing accounts. So when services are due, the payment is due. Is payment due up front? Is payment due in 15 days? Is it due in 30 days? Get your terms. Number 5, what is covered? In other words, are you going to cover every single pest, or you're excluding pests? In other words, if a customer calls you and says, well, you started my pest control and now my kitchens are full of flies. Are flies covered? Are bees covered? Are wasps covered? Fleas? What's covered and what's not covered on the interior? Vertebrates, are they covered? So if you're not covering something, you need to tell people what's excluded, what's included. All of a sudden, you do a restaurant for German roaches and the customer's calling you back that they've got sewer flies. Well, sewer flies aren't covered because you only charge for a German roach. So you need to tell people, and this is where a lot of people get callbacks, where a lot of people get customers upset that they weren't told that certain things weren't covered. I mean, your invoice says pest control, and as far as they're concerned, all those are pests. So having that up front and letting people know what you will do and what you won't do. If you're doing, in our case, we do lawns, shrubs, and trees. And there are things we can't cover, like viral diseases. Things we can't cover, like root fungus. Because a lot of the time, it's not caused by a pathogen. It is caused by either malpractice or just doing the wrong thing. We go to a house and they've got, there's 1,000 palm trees in there, in that property. And the landscaper is pruning the palm tree. He doesn't sterilize his equipment between palm tree and palm tree, and he transmits with his pruning equipment, he transmits a disease to the shrubs. Customer's going to say, well, you're supposed to be doing, fungus control, and that's a disease. So you say disease control, and, are you covering that disease? Well, we're not. We clearly say in our contract that we're not responsible for any loss or damage to property due to disease or any other insect damage. I mean, we get a new insect in Florida all of a sudden, and we can't find out how to control it. How do you control it? If you've got a new invasive species that you're dealing with. So there are limits of what you can and can't do. MLO diseases, butt rot, vascular diseases that we don't cover under our contract. We cover foliar diseases only, and we only cover insect damage that is documented. All of a sudden, we get an insect we don't know how to control, and this insect goes in and starts destroying these trees, and we're not aware that it's even here. Because, I remember when I first started doing whitefly on gumbo limbos, it actually happened in the city that I was actually in at that time, working like crazy, and I was able to see this new insect before anybody else saw it in the state. And I immediately got on my phone with my extension agent and say, hey, we got this bug on these palm trees that I've never seen, and on gumbo limbos. And what is this? Well, yeah, we just discovered that. So, it was a learning curve to try to get that under control. If you're doing mosquito control, number 8, if you're doing mosquito control and you're doing barrier service, the customer says, well, I'm still getting bit. Are you offering a control service? And in the mind of the customer, control means they can go outside anytime and not get bit. You're going to have to put an exclusion in there that you're not responsible for bites, that it's a reduction service, that it doesn't eradicate any pests from their property. That, those are things that you have to explain to the customer, that it's not intended to treat or prevent mosquito-borne diseases, because you're not a doctor and you're not curing. You're not, get rid of the Aedes mosquito that is causing the Zika virus. It does not prevent bites. If you go out there an hour before and there's still mosquitoes out there, they're going to be active. It's a reduction service. And most people give us a call all the time expecting they're going to see, and then you hear sometimes customers talk like this, because if I get a bite, my kid gets a bite and he gets a disease, I'm going to sue you. And right there, that's a good indication that I really don't want you as a customer. When customers start talking like that, and I simply just let them know it's that, I'm upfront with customers. I said, look, this is what it covers. This is what it doesn't. This is what it's going to do. This is not what it's going to do. And, and it's in our contract that we're not going to guarantee against that kind of problem. In number 9, our inspection and damages. You failed to do in a landscape, and all of a sudden, you show up and you're spraying and you're doing this and you're doing that, and there's an existing problem with pest or disease that already caused damage to the tree. The disease, the tree had dieback because of it. Now the customer is expecting you to restore the tree. And I had one customer, we do this all the time, they got dieback, and I said, look, that really needs to get pruned back and pruned right. And you're going to have a hole there, and that's not going to grow back. And that's going to take years before that area gets filled in again. This is not going to happen because you just started your service with me. This is going to take years for that to get fixed. Issues with irrigation, improper irrigation. They installed the wrong plant in the wrong place, and there's too much water, and water's damaging it. Are you going to be getting a call every week because their plants are dying, and it isn't because of what you did. It's just because it's in the wrong place. The landscaper decided he was going to install it there because the owner told him to install it there. And, that's a shaded plant and it belongs in full sun. Which one is it? And they just put the wrong plant in the wrong place. So, how much are you liable for? Trimming, mowing. That plant needs to be hand pruned, and the landscaper didn't know that, and he's trimming it, with an electric trimmer, causing damage to the plant, and the customer, now the plant looks horrible, and the customer is telling you to do something to fix it. You can't, it isn't like we have liquid leaf that we can put a leaf back together and fix something after it's damaged. So you got limitations on those programs. Additions and alterations. If you're doing landscape or the customer adds something to that property or takes away, and now you come and say, well, it's going to be more money because you added all these plants, and these are really high level plants. All of a sudden that's going to cost you an extra $50 a month. And he's like, oh no, why didn't you tell me? I said, you didn't ask. Do you do consultation for your clients before they make changes to the landscape? I got customers that, they own the property, and I tell them, and I'll show up next month, and there's all these plants were installed, and they're wanting us to treat them, and I'm like, no, this is going to cost you more money now. You've added 500 more plants to this property, and that's going to be additional labor for us and additional material. That's going to cost you this much. So, which grasses won't you treat? Which, what things can't you solve? Like, all of a sudden the lawn gets crabgrass. He's expecting you to have a chemical for that. There is no chemical for that. Not on St. Augustine lawn. So is he going to have to hand pull that? He's going to have to replace that sod. Those are things that the customer needs to know up front. And here in South Florida, we just had to add to our contract regarding nitrogen blackout periods. You're in a part of a county who all of a sudden has a fertilizer restriction in the summer, and you can't add fertilizer. The customer is expecting you to fertilize their plants because it's in your contract. Well, if there's a law that changes, we put it in our contract that, hey, all of a sudden there's a law, we're going to abide by that law, and, you're fine. We'll give you a credit. We'll take the fertilizing off the program, whatever, but understand we can't violate the law. A customer decides he's going to move from a house that has a big backyard to a house that's lakefront, and he wants that lawn beautiful all the way to the edge. Hey, we got a 10-foot restriction in Florida. We can't spray 10 feet from that water. You're going to end up living with weeds, or you need to put a retaining wall there or do something 10 feet away from that water. But, we're not going to violate the law. Customers' obligations. I mean, if the customer decides he's going to do it his way, he's not going to clean. He's not going to seal. Customers saying, well, you sold me a rodent exterior station service, and I've got rats in my house, and, because, he doesn't have exclusion, or he's leaving the garage door open all the time, or he leaves the back door open all the time, and now he's got a rodent in his house, and, he's expecting you to get that out. Is that covered under your, gutters that don't drain right, that drain away from the property, that are wrong? All these things you need to consider of what it is that you can't cover, and be upfront with that client. That you're not going to be able to, keep that lawn looking nice if he's got that gutter pumping, 20 gallons of water into that area, or 200 gallons of water into that area every time it rains. Customer doesn't do sanitation, doesn't clean right. And you're in a restaurant and the customer refuses to clean. Are you obligated to go back and retreat that? We've got it in our contract that no. And as a matter of fact, if we find problems that they need to be corrected in order for us to guarantee our control, we will write it in and say, you've got 30 days. And if you don't get it done in 30 days, then we reserve the right to walk out on this because you haven't kept up your end of the agreement. You said you were going to get this fixed. You said you were going to get this cleaned, and you haven't. Therefore, we're not responsible. And every time you call us, then we're going to have an additional trip charge added to the contract because you don't want to do your end of the bargain. So, what's reasonable and what's customary, and reality is that you have to be reasonable and customary because no court will hold it up if you've got a problem with that contract because it's not reasonable and customary. You were being unreasonable in your contract. General chemical information. You got to have a warning on your contract that says basically all pesticides can be harmful. There is no such thing as a 100% safe program. And people who offer safe pest control and are offering their client, one day they have to use something that is not as safe as they promised the customer. In our contract, it's written, we're going to do what we can to not contaminate your property. We're going to do what we can to not have to spray. But in the case that we have to, you're giving us that authority in the contract to do so. You can't tell us, well, I needed a 100% organic. And if that's the case, then we write that in. And then when we can't do it, we got to tell you, listen, it can't be done because we got to use a product and it's in our contract that we can't use it. So, advisory of potential occupants, people who are, with illnesses and diseases, and they want to be, if you got a patient in that room, you need to get them out. If you got a person who's bedridden in a room, you got to get them out. And they got to know that if in order for me to treat that room, that person's got to be moved. If they can't be moved, we can't treat around that person. So, they're saying, no, I need you to treat it because, all of a sudden they're getting bit by, bed bugs, but they can't leave the room. I said, we can't do that. And so it's written in the contract. Other service exclusions that we put in, like anything that, since we don't do termites, nothing, no wood destroying organism as beetles, termites are in our contract. Our contract does not. It excludes bed bugs. It excludes fungus. It includes mold. Because in most states, you can do mold remediation, not in Florida. You need a special license to remove mold, and all of a sudden you say, well, we got timber and this and that we can treat the mold with in the wall, and we can't. So you need to know if you can or can't. And if you can't, then you need to exclude that from your contract. Against reinfestation. So once you do this, I'm not going to have another pest, right? No, we do not warrant against reinfestation. You do a bed bug job, 6 months down the line, the customer decided he's going to do Airbnb, and you get bed bugs because somebody brought them in. Are you responsible then? That this is becoming very, very popular now with Airbnb, where, are you gonna cover it if the customer brings in another client that had bed bugs? Because they're traveling all over the place. You don't know where they're staying. So you need to really, really look at that. Waivers that expressly releases you against claims, compensation and retreatment and repairs from insect and rodent damage that is caused to the property. All of a sudden, you install rodent stations, and the rodents ate up all their cables. Are you going to be held responsible for rodents eating up all their data cables? Because somehow that rodent found a way in because something wasn't sealed. Are you going to give a guarantee against damage? And if a rodent goes in there and starts making a nest and pooping, and they want you to remove all of the attic insulation and vacuum it up and retreat all that because and a rodent made himself in there. No. So you need to how will you respond to those things? What period of time can they come back 3 years later to you and say, well, 3 years ago you did this service and now, well, no, you need to put a time limit that we will respond to any incidents within 1 year. That's it. Tops. Acts of God, what are known as acts of God and other events. If there's a storm, you got a contract, and all of a sudden there's a storm, and there's damage to the property, and they don't want you performing the pest control for the next 6 months. Are you going to be out of business in 6 months because the customer says they don't want the service until the house is repaired, and they're canceling the contract? Are you going to go to court, or are you going to opt for mediation first? And I think it'd be smart for you to include a mediation agreement that, any dispute that arises from any property damage or anything, they agree to go to mediation. And they can't take you to court and sue you in court. They have to agree to go to mediation. That is much cheaper to go between, find a neutral arbitrator or arbiter and have that discussion versus going to court. Anything that gets attached to that agreement is part of the agreement. So if there's a graph, a drawing, a checklist, anything that you did that when you do an inspection report and they got a dirty kitchen and they've got no covers on anything, and you do an inspection report and all of a sudden you sign a contract and they're like, well, yeah, but you didn't put it in the no, anything that we did, that inspection report that you signed, that's part of the agreement. And you didn't get this cleaned and you didn't get this done. Therefore, you're in violation of the agreement and we can walk out of here. What other things that, where do they communicate with you? What address are they going to send any documentation to? You need an address where they're going to send, and after a year of anything that arises, they can't come back 2-3 years later and say, well, 3 years ago, like I said, you did my rodent exclusion and now you're coming back and saying, well, they ate through this hole, and you said if I did rodent exclusion, I wouldn't have any more rodents. I mean, people promise a lot of things that they can't deliver to get the sale, and the customer says, yeah, but I've got that where you wrote it down, that you were giving us, a lifetime warranty on rodent exclusion. I mean, you're setting yourself up for a lot of headaches and a lot of problems when you make, claims that nobody else can claim. So there are things that you need to have in your contract, in your terms and agreements. We will gladly share this information with you. We're going to put this up over on our member section, and you're welcome to get it and, take it to your attorney and have him write it up, or at least what you're doing. It does not constitute that you actually have a valid agreement in your state because you use the terms and conditions. So you really, really, really need to talk to your attorney about this before you write all this in and create a contract. But it would be to your benefit to always have a contract, even if you don't have a long-term contract, even if it's a one-time service, even if it's on a 30-day, you can cancel anytime. You still need the terms, conditions, and exclusions in your contract, because if not, you open up yourself up to that liability. So go ahead, take a look at it. We're going to go ahead and publish that there, and you can download it for yourself. It's going to be as a sample that you can use, and if it helps you out to get clarity on your contract and what you don't have, maybe something's missing from yours that you need to add, then you can go ahead and use it. Hey guys, I've had a blast. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me every week, for tuning in. We're really, really, really happy that you're here, and we're excited. So, folks, until next time, hey, you have a great one. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.